What if the biggest threat to your career isn't automation, isn't artificial intelligence, isn't globalization, but your own inability to focus? Imagine sitting down to work. You open your laptop with the intention of making real progress. Within minutes, a notification flashes. You check it, then another, then an email, then you quickly scan social media. An hour passes. You've been busy, but nothing meaningful is done. Now, multiply that by years. This is the quiet crisis of modern work. And in Deep Work, written by a computer science professor, Cal Newport, we're confronted with a bold, uncomfortable claim. The ability to perform deep, focused work is becoming increasingly rare at exactly the same time it's becoming increasingly valuable. And those who cultivate it will thrive. Those who don't will struggle. This isn't a book about minor productivity hacks. It's not about optimizing your to-do list. It's about reclaiming your cognitive depth in a distracted world, and in doing so, building a life of craftsmanship, meaning, and competitive advantage. Over the next hour, we're going to unpack every major idea in this book. Not just what deep work is, but why it matters, how to train it, and what it reveals about the modern condition. Because this isn't just about focus. It's about reclaiming your mind. Let's begin. To understand deep work, we need to understand the world it responds to. Cal Newport is not a Silicon Valley influencer or a digital detox guru. He's a tenured professor at Georgetown University, specializing in theoretical computer science. His professional life depends on sustained concentration, writing research papers, solving complex problems, producing original thought. And what he noticed early in his career was something paradoxical. The economy increasingly rewards high-skill, creative, cognitively demanding work. At the same time, our environments are increasingly designed to fracture attention. Open offices, Slack messages, constant email, social media, meetings layered on meetings. We are busier than ever, but are we producing anything of lasting value? Newport identifies two types of work: deep work and shallow work. Deep work is professional activity performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that pushes your cognitive abilities to their limit. It creates new value, improves skills, and is difficult to replicate. Shallow work, by contrast, consists of logistical tasks, emails, meetings, minor administrative duties that keep you busy but don't significantly expand your capacity or produce substantial output. Shallow work is easy to replicate. Deep work is rare, and rarity in a market creates value. Newport's core thesis is that, in the knowledge economy, those who can master hard things quickly and produce at an elite level will thrive, and that mastery requires deep work. This is not optional. It's foundational. The book is divided into two major parts. The first part argues why deep work matters. The second part explains how to cultivate it. Let's start with the argument. Newport identifies three types of people who will succeed in the new economy. First, those who can work effectively with intelligent machines. Second, those who are the best at what they do, the top performers. Third, those with access to capital. For most of us, the path forward is to become highly skilled and continuously upgrade those skills. And here's the catch. You cannot become highly skilled in a state of constant distraction. Skill acquisition requires intense focus. Similarly, producing elite output, whether writing, coding, designing, strategizing, requires sustained cognitive effort. Deep work allows you to compress time. One focused hour can produce what 5 distracted hours cannot. Newport illustrates this with examples of high performers who deliberately isolate themselves to produce meaningful work. He references historical figures like Carl Jung, retreating to a stone tower to think deeply. He describes authors who disconnect entirely during writing seasons. The pattern is clear. Great output requires deep focus. But if deep work is so valuable, why is it so rare? Newport argues that modern workplaces reward visible busyness over meaningful output. Answering emails quickly signals responsiveness. Attending meetings signals collaboration. Posting on social media signals engagement. These behaviors are measurable and visible. Deep work is invisible. No one sees you thinking intensely. No notification confirms you're solving a hard problem. As a result, many organizations drift toward shallow metrics. There's also what Newport calls the principle of least resistance. In the absence of clear feedback, we default to what's easiest in the moment. Checking email feels productive. Starting a hard task feels uncomfortable. So we gravitate toward distraction. Add to that the addictive design of digital platforms, and we find ourselves in a culture where depth is systematically undermined. But Newport doesn't just diagnose the problem. He reframes it. Deep work is not merely a productivity strategy. It is a competitive advantage, and it is trainable. Now we enter the practical half of the book. The rules. Rule 1. Work deeply. This rule addresses the central question: how do you build deep work into your life? Newport argues that deep work must be scheduled. It doesn't happen by accident. He describes several philosophies for integrating deep work. The monastic philosophy involves eliminating or drastically minimizing shallow obligations. Think of authors or researchers who isolate themselves entirely. The bimodal philosophy divides time into clearly defined, deep and shallow periods. For example, dedicating entire days or weeks exclusively to deep work. The rhythmic philosophy builds a daily habit, setting aside consistent blocks of time each day for focused effort. The journalistic philosophy involves switching into deep work whenever time allows, like a journalist writing on deadline. Each approach has trade-offs. The key insight is intentionality. Deep work requires ritual. Newport emphasizes creating a specific routine where you'll work. For how long, with what rules, and how you'll measure success. He also introduces the concept of lead measures, focusing on behaviors you can control, like hours spent in deep work, rather than lagging outcomes like promotions. This shifts attention from results to process. Another powerful idea here is embracing boredom. Our brains have become conditioned to seek stimulation constantly. Every idle moment is filled with scrolling. But deep work requires tolerance for cognitive discomfort. If you constantly escape boredom with quick dopamine hits, your ability to concentrate weakens. So Newport recommends training your brain by resisting the urge to check your phone. Let your mind rest without stimulation. Rebuild your capacity for focus. Deep work is like a muscle. It strengthens with use. Rule 2. Embrace boredom. This builds directly on the previous concept. Newport explains that the ability to focus intensely is intertwined with the ability to resist distraction. If you give in to distraction whenever it appears, you reinforce a habit loop. Instead, you must rewire your brain. One strategy he describes is productive meditation, focusing on a single professional problem while walking or engaging in a physical activity. When your mind wanders, you gently bring it back. This trains sustained attention. Another key idea is scheduling internet use rather than using it continuously. Decide in advance when you'll check email or social media and avoid it outside those windows. This creates friction between impulse and action. The broader theme here is self-regulation. In a world optimized for instant gratification, deep work requires deliberate friction. It requires saying no. Rule 3. Quit social media. This is one of the book's most controversial sections. Newport challenges the assumption that you must be active on every digital platform. He introduces the craftsman approach to tool selection. Instead of adopting tools because they're popular, evaluate them based on whether they significantly support what you value. If a tool provides minor benefits, but imposes significant costs on attention, reconsider its necessity. He encourages a 30-day digital declutter, stepping away from optional technologies, and observing what truly adds value. The deeper message is not anti-technology, it's pro-intentionality. Tools should serve your goals, not fragment your mind. Rule 4. drain the shallows. This rule addresses the reality that shallow work cannot be eliminated entirely. Emails, meetings, and logistics are part of modern work, but they must be constrained. Newport suggests scheduling every minute of your workday, not rigidly, but intentionally. Assign blocks for deep work and shallow tasks. He also recommends quantifying the shallow work in your life. How many hours per week are spent on tasks that don't require intense focus? Awareness often reveals imbalance. He proposes setting a shallow work budget, limiting time spent on low-value tasks. Another practical strategy is becoming harder to reach. Craft thoughtful email policies. Reduce unnecessary back and forth. Encourage clarity in communication. These tactics are not about isolation. They are about protecting cognitive bandwidth. Beyond these rules, deep work carries a philosophical undercurrent. Newport draws on the idea of craftsmanship, the satisfaction derived from honing a skill and producing something meaningful. In contrast to the distraction-driven culture of quick updates and fragmented attention, deep work offers immersion, flow, presence. There's a quiet dignity in mastering something difficult, and there's psychological fulfillment in losing yourself in focused effort. Newport suggests that deep work is not only economically valuable, but intrinsically rewarding. It aligns with our cognitive architecture. Humans evolved to solve problems, build tools, create systems. Distraction undermines that. Depth restores it. Let's pause and reflect on what this means in practical life. Imagine dedicating 2 hours each morning to uninterrupted focus on your most valuable project. No notifications, no email, no switching. Imagine doing this consistently for a year. How many books could you write? How many skills could you master? How much intellectual leverage could you build? Deep work compounds. Small daily sessions accumulate into extraordinary output. And because most people don't cultivate this ability, those who do stand out dramatically. This is not about working more hours. It's about working with intensity. Of course, there are challenges. Some jobs require high responsiveness. Some roles demand constant communication. Newport acknowledges this, but argues that, even within constraints, pockets of depth can be carved out. The book may feel idealistic to those in chaotic environments, but its core principle remains adaptable. Protect your cognitive capacity wherever possible. Another potential limitation is that not all valuable work is solitary. Collaboration matters. Brainstorming matters. However, deep work doesn't exclude collaboration. It enhances it. Individuals who think deeply bring better ideas to teams. The key is balancing connection with concentration. As we approach the conclusion, let's return to the central thesis. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. It is becoming rare, it is becoming valuable, and it is meaningful. In a world obsessed with speed, depth feels radical. In a culture addicted to interruption, silence feels rebellious. But the individuals who master deep work are not just more productive, they are more present. They experience their work as craft rather than chaos. They build skills that compound rather than scatter. So here's the final reflection. What would change in your life if you treated focus as sacred? If you guarded your attention the way you guard your money? If you stopped measuring productivity by busyness and started measuring it by depth? Because in the end, your attention is your life. What you focus on shapes what you create. What you create shapes who you become. Deep work is not just about career advancement. It's about reclaiming your mind from fragmentation. It's about choosing depth over distraction. And in that choice, you don't just become more effective. You become more intentional, more capable, more powerful. In a distracted world, the ability to concentrate is a superpower. And like any superpower, it must be trained. The question is, will you train it? Or will you let the noise decide your future? Because the difference between shallow busyness and deep achievement is not talent, it's focus. And focus is a choice.